Hi, intro. I'm going to go ahead and, since you have an e-learning day today, I'm going to give you the next steps for how to add ink to your drawing, to your Zentangle drawing. And hopefully you are finished with the pencil portion, because that should have been done really by the end of today, by 11:59 tonight, and it's Monday right now. And I hope you guys had a good long weekend. So, you are going to trace, you want to think, first of all, use your dual tip Sharpie that I gave you. So the one that has the ultra fine tip and then also the fine tip. Mine has dried up for some reason. I don't know if yours is doing the same, hopefully not. But you want to start out, so I'm going to use a different pen. This is also an ultra fine tip. But you want to start out using that ultra fine tip to trace everything. Now, when you start with ink, I don't know how you were doing with your pencil, like as far as your pattern, drawing your patterns, but pencil is okay sometimes to be a little bit sketchy. But when it comes to ink, at least for this application, you want to keep everything really smooth. So you want to almost envision that like the ink is just kind of like flowing from the end of the pen. So when you start tracing, you want to do it in one fluid line. Like, try to not lift up your pen. I use the cushion of my hand as like a stabilizer against the paper, so that I can just kind of pick up where I left off and try and keep my lines as smooth as possible. You may have to turn your paper or rotate your paper so that you can, make those lines more smooth and clean, but the goal is that they don't look sketchy in the end. We want them to be as clean as possible. So you want to trace over everything with that ultra fine tip. And at that point, then you'll have your entire drawing, looking like a black and white drawing. At that point, you can choose to erase out any pencil lines that you see. And then you want to start adding in contrast. So let me trace a few more things here. So I just did an abstract drawing for this one, but you saw the cat that I did before. And if I were, filling in the cat drawing, I would have tried to make the cat the focal point. So again, remember, you're going to add emphasis or high contrast wherever you have a focal, like wherever you want your focal point to be. That's where you're going to have the greatest area of contrast. So I'm going to kind of fill these in a little bit. Might take you a bit more time to accomplish some of these things. If you have like things that are super straight, remember you weren't supposed to use any sort of stencil or ruler or drawing aid. So I would say just make sure that you're doing everything by hand. Even like when you're tracing with the pen, it should just be done by hand. And then to add in contrast, like I started adding in some contrast here in like the insides of this design. But then to really add some high contrast or to play around with it, I think I'll leave these like teardrop looking things mostly white. And then to be in contrast to that, I'm going to go in with my fine tip Sharpie, like the bigger, broader tip. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to fill in, I think, the background because of where it meets those teardrops. So you want to think about that, like how your patterns come together. In your practice pattern sheet, you guys had areas of transition where you brought two patterns together. So hopefully you're used to kind of thinking about that, or you can go back to that sheet and take a look at what you did and kind of think through how, your patterns come together. But since those white teardrop shapes are mostly, are white, then I wanted to add some contrast by filling in the background with black. So don't forget that you're going to need 5+ line weights. That's on your rubric. I would really recommend that you look at your rubric again. I would guess that it's probably fair to say that by the end of this week, this should be completed. So you might get the tracing done and filling in. If you started already, you might, have time to go back or to turn it in early. But I would expect that by the beginning of next week, you would need to turn these in. So they would need to be entirely completed. By the end of this week, you'll have your last art production day in class, when we're back in class. So just think about your contrast. That's going to create an area of emphasis. And then I could even, like, if I wanted to kind of blend these two together, I could add, extend that, and that might make that transition between the two patterns a little more fluid. This is kind of where you can experiment a little bit. Like, maybe it wasn't your idea in the beginning, but you have an idea after looking at it and you think, oh, that might turn out kind of good. Feel free to test it out with pencil first and then go over the top of it with your marker, and try to stay as neat and clean as you can. Like, I got a little bit rough there with like filling in, and so I'm going back now and just kind of like smoothing all the edges out. You want to stay super neat. You do have an area of your rubric criteria that is based on craft, which means like how neat and precise you are. So try to be as neat as possible with your ink. Once you're done with everything, take your pink eraser, go over the top, erase out any of your pencil lines so that you are just left with the Zentangle lines, and then make sure to take a picture directly from above. You'll be able to refer to the assignment for an example of that. All right, I will hope to see you later on this week.